Welcome to our highlights of the British Cycling Talent Tour, Zwift racing designed to keep our national level youth bike riders fit and motivated during the coronavirus lockdown. This month we were celebrating the best of British races: Tour de Yorkshire, Ride London, Tour of Britain and the Women's Tour, and of course the World and Olympic Championships. Stage 1 was something for the sprinters on London's greatest London flat course, with both the boys and the girls race finishing in the predicted bunch sprints. It was a blanket finish in the boys race with the top three of Sam Thomas of Derby Mercury, Ollie Box, Bournemouth Arrow and Rory Spencer of East Kilbride RC finishing within a tenth of a second of each other. Top positions in the girls race were made up of those who'd mostly go on to challenge the GC. The top three were Elizabeth McKinnon of Derwentside CC, Esme Wiley of VC Laundrers and Keris Graves of Lichfield CCC. Boys' top three were James Piercy of Dartmoor Velo, Ben Flato of Charlotteville CC ahead of his under-14 teammate Charlie Abraham. Stage 2 moved up to Yorkshire on the Tour of Two at Well course, taking in some of the main features of last year's World Championship course. The hilly 30 kilometres split the bunch and saw the first real statement of intent for the GC riders. Girls' top three were Elizabeth McKinnon, Mari Porton of Redditch Road and Path and Keris Graves. Saturday morning was the time trial stage, shorter and flatter than last month's, with times ranging between 6 and 9 minutes on the Duchy Estate course in Yorkshire. Archie Ellen of Edinburgh RC finished 4 seconds ahead in the boys' race from Ben Walker of Lee Valley Youth CC and Ben Johnston of Racing Metro 15 on the same time. Murray Porton won the girls' race by a clear 8 seconds from Kerris Graves and Grace Lister of Zero Cycle Division Racing Team. The final stage moved back to London for 2 laps of the greatest London Loop course, taken in 2 ascents of Box Hill, made famous by the 2012 Olympic road race. We'll join our live commentary halfway through the race, then we'll be back with a few rider interviews and clips to finish. The Talent Tour will return on the 23rd to 25th of July. The pace is back on now, so the gap has come right down to a tantalising 7 or 8 seconds to the lone riders dangling off the back, but the pressure's back on just as we've kicked up that climb up towards Trafalgar Square, and they're so close. Obviously the shortening effect when you go up a hill, the actual distance is quite close, but the time gap is still the same. But Archie Ellen is really digging in here, 7.5 watts a kilo, and he's bridging across. He is getting across. I think he might just catch him by the time we hit Nelson's column here. But what damage has he done to get across this gap? He's put in a massive bit of effort here. We've got a small descent for him to try and recover on, but we do obviously have to go up Box Hill again. So brilliant ride from Archie there. He's got himself across. He's done what he has to do, but can he now hang on to it?
And we have Ruby Oakes, who's having to battle back to the front group. The pressure from Porton on the climb up to Trafalgar Square has just made a few seconds gap that she's having to work hard to close. She's putting in 4.6 watts per kilo, so she's working harder than the group in front. So she is closing that gap, but she's having to persist with this effort. It's going to take her a minute or so, a couple of minutes maybe to get back across if she can get there. And then what that's going to lead to is that as we turn across towards Box Hill, she might pay for this effort. So she's having to make a big effort here. She is closing that gap. She's working hard. She's above 5 watts per kilo now. But you've got to make sure she manages that effort. You've got to try and get across that gap as soon as possible, because the more time you spend working here, the more you're going to pay when we start to get towards the climb.
So we just hit the right hand turn. We're heading up the first straight of Box Hill. Exactly a repeat of what happened last lap. So Ben Walker is flying off the front, high cadence, 110 RPM or so, pushing 400 watts, which is pretty good going. He's lying in 20th place overall, and I think he qualifies. Can't quite see if he's in the under 14 category or not, but anyway, so he's ripping it up off the front. The rest of the peloton though is riding pretty steady. We've got a couple of other riders kind of in no man's land in between. Ben Lawrence is tried to go with Ben Walker, I think, and is maybe deciding against it and slipping back to the bunch now. And then the bunch begins with Callum Start of Mid Devon CC leading them up.
So the fight for position for the girls starts to begin as we head towards Box Hill. We're just going to go down into the tube. We've got a relatively small group. It's 9 riders, but it's still important that you're focused. You've got to be really alert. We've seen a few riders have been under pressure in the last few minutes, last few laps. And so therefore, all the riders are going to want to be very cautious about being caught out too far back behind the riders that might find this climb too much of a reach. So we've got 9 riders, but they all want to be in those front positions as we head down to the underground.
It's really hard to make a call on it, obviously not being able to see the real life riders, and that's why it's great to get some video clips in for the highlights package. But I get the impression our lead bunch is taking it a little steadier up Box Hill this time. I think maybe they've decided that Ben Walker riding off the front isn't a threat to the overall GC position. He is 5 minutes down, and so if he wins a stage, maybe the bunch isn't too fussed about that, but they're all concentrating on the GC. So yeah, the bunch potentially taking a little bit easier, which maybe will mean we see some fireworks on the descent perhaps, or on that ramp up through the tube station, or even just on the flat few kilometres running back into London. So yeah, maybe the calm before the storm.
The avatars' faces do make it look all rather easy, don't they? They look very composed climbing the climb. So as we head towards Box Hill for the girls, we're just starting that little ramp before we start the climb proper. Quick reminder of the GC positions. We've got Mary Porton, our overall leader. She has 8 seconds on Ceres Greaves. So that is a small gap that could be quite quickly closed and overturned if needed. Then it's 25 seconds back to Chibak and McKinnon, and then 26 seconds to Electra Morris. That is our front group. So the riders that need 25, 26 seconds, they might need to put the pressure on early to try and create those bigger gaps. But if they attack early, that exposes them to a counter-attack from the likes of Porton Greaves, or the other riders slightly further down the GC, Caitlin Havisham, Karis Blowers, and Izzy Mays.
Electra Morris, by the way, this is home course for her. She lives only down the road in near Guildford, I think. Similar, maybe Connor Williams is a sort of southwest London resident, so familiar roads for a few of the riders on the race today.
I'm sure responsible for many of those Strava efforts up Box Hill in real life.
Yeah, maybe a few percent, yeah.
So we have Morris, who is looking to make that move for her GC position. She's pushing the pace at the front of the leading group. She's got 26 seconds to try and climb back, and in some ways she's not got that much to lose because she's got 3.5 minutes lead on the next rider in GC. So she's almost got a free hand here in 5th place overall. Is that all she can really do is gain time unless we have a major disaster and she really blows up on this climb. So she's a very dangerous rider, one to watch for the rest of the GC riders, because she has only lots to gain and therefore might take a few more risks.
Same again, Ben Walker with a 40-second lead at the moment over the bunch. Ben Lawrence stuck in no man's land. He did persevere after trying to go with Ben Walker to start off with, but he's now on his own, grinding out a pretty big gear there, 65 RPM up the hill. That's probably going to take it out of his legs if he wants to sprint towards the end. A more spinny 80 to 90 RPM is probably a bit more common. And the bunch itself is a long, thin line at the moment. So little gaps, a couple of meters, a couple of bike lengths in between. A lot of riders here. We're getting towards the end of that long final straight, which will probably get to my favourite cafe. And I think it's doing some damage. I thought at first maybe the bunch was taking it a little bit easier up here, but I might have been wrong. I think the accumulated fatigue of the previous lap is really taking its toll now, and although most riders are there or thereabouts, they are strung out, so anyone could snap at any minute.
So we've seen an excellent example of defensive riding from Mary Porton so far on this climb. She's riding in a constant hard effort, not absolutely flat out. It looks like she's got something in the tank if she needs it to respond to attacks. But by riding in that hard effort, it makes it much more difficult for her rivals to think about going on the offensive. They're just thinking about surviving under the hard pace. And we've had Ruby Oakes and Caitlin Blowers are just getting tailed off the back of this group. Blowers is just hanging on. So that's our front group. It's important, our GC leader, riding defensively at the front, trying to hold a sustained effort. And then it's Chibak and the rest are trying to find a way to use the final climb of Box Hill to try and leverage their climbing ability and try and get some time back on GC.
Riding in 4th place at the moment and 5th place on GC, Mark Lightfoot has just sprung an attack in the last 30 seconds or so of the climb. He's blasted away and got himself a few seconds gap, and there are 2 or 3 riders up the road, so I think Ben Walker, Matty Cole and Bryn Lawrence are up the road. So he does have company. If he can get across, he might be able to work with them. That said, commentator's curse, Angus Stoneham is bringing the bunch back just as we start to hit the first part of the descent, but don't forget we do have that annoying little extra bonus climb coming up in a few seconds as well, just when you thought that all the hills were over.
So Karis Blowers has just got unhitched, so we are down to 7 riders at the front. It's still Porton on the front, still setting that infernal tempo. Does she trust that the 8-second advantage she's got over Greaves is going to be enough that she can defend on that final run into the line? Or is she going to try and really kind of stick the knife in and try and finish this one off on the climb? She's putting pressure on her rivals. Morris is second wheel at the moment, and Greaves, McKinnon and Chibak are all there looking for an opportunity to pounce. Or are they just surviving? And Mays is doing really well. Izzy Mays is hanging on with our leading riders along with Caitlin Havisham. So that is our leading group. It's Porton riding hard. Is she on the defensive, or is she starting to gradually turn the screw on her rivals?
The lightweight, featherweight power-ups came out in force as we hit that little climb, but we are now on the long descent, so 10% gradient downhill. The cadences spin up, and the speed is 60 kilometers an hour already. We got up to 90 kilometers an hour last lap, so let's see if we can beat that. No safety concerns in Zwift, so go as fast as you want. I don't care.
So we said that there was a close fight for the top 10 position between Karis Blowers and Izzy Mays, and it looks like that is now swinging towards Izzy Mays, the rider that started the stage on 8th place in GC. She now has a 13-second lead on Blowers. She only needed 3 seconds to overturn her GC position. So Karis Blowers needs to manage her effort and try and do what she can to close that gap up again by the time we get to the top of the climb or on the descent back towards London. So pressure's on for the fight in the top positions in the GC, as our top 5 are still looking at each other, still working hard on the pressure of Porton on this climb.
Ben Walker is maintaining his lead on the way down the hill. He's got over a minute's gap. Okay, muted. Finley, if you can hear, you may want to mute. Just for everyone else, I've muted you for myself. So anyway, yeah, Ben's maintaining that lead, really good. But behind him, Matty Cole and Bryn Lawrence have got together, which is crucial, especially now as we're on the flat, or almost on the flat anyway. They can work together. And then behind them we have a pretty big group of about only 12 seconds behind them. How big is this group? I'm just going back. Actually, it is a really big group. We've got basically everyone still together, so the remaining 16, 17 riders all together in this bunch.
So we have a front group, and Karis Blowers now has an ally. She's got Ruby Oakes, and those 2 riders are at 21 seconds behind the leading group, so they might be able to work together, try and rectify their position in the overall standings. It's still Porton riding on the front. She's got the polka dot jersey for the fastest time at the climb on the first time round. She was 0.1 of a second ahead of Blowers, who's had a tough time. McKinnon and Mays were another 0.1 of a second behind. So it was close last time round, but Porton is again setting the agenda on this climb as she was doing on the first lap of the race.
So our leader, Ben Walker, has just boosted his way up that big steep escalator climb out of the underground. Angus Stoneham, though, is doing a massive effort to get across to second and third place, and he's just flown straight past them. They didn't even see him coming. He's flown straight past them, but he now hits that big ramp. His avatar gets out the saddle and flies up it. He's doing 30 kilometers an hour up that steep climb, as everyone else's power numbers go orange as they hit it as well. So I think Angus maybe has been saving a little bit in the tank for this last effort, and it is only about a kilometre to go into the run-in into the finish. Whether or not you can catch Ben Walker, I think probably is a bit of a big ask, but Angus is lying in 6th place on the GC overall, only 16 seconds behind James Piercy. Where is James? Let me find him. James is currently 5 seconds behind Angus. He is in a massive group though, so currently he's leading by 10 seconds in the GC. He's got that advantage of the big group, so probably James needs to set an example in that group and just get on the front, drive it, and sort of set the precedent to hope the rest of that bunch works with him. Otherwise, it's entirely possible Angus could claw back another 10 seconds.
The girls have just crested the main climb of Box Hill. It wasn't as quick as the first descent, so they may be saving something back similar to the boys. That pressure from Portland dissuaded any attacks from her rivals. Will they use this last steep ramp before we start the descent as an opportunity for a springboard? So we've still got our front group all together, and as we approach this last steep ramp.
So Angus Stoneham just hanging out there by 4 seconds. He looks tantalisingly close. It looks like it's only a few metres on the road. You could easily bridge across, but let's not remember these riders have just done 30 extremely hard kilometres. We don't actually get the countdown on the screen here as we're watching, but I think it is only... I think we're almost there basically. It's agonisingly close. Angus Stoneham is getting drawn back in by that massive charging bunch behind him. We're into the last few hundred metres, I think. We're into the barriers, just rounding the corner just by St Paul's Cathedral here. The orange numbers light up as everyone engages their slipstream power-ups. 200 metres to go in the boys' race. Edward Charles bringing it home to hopefully chip off the front of the bunch sprint, but no, Mark Lightfoot has just rolled in with 10 metres to spare. Mark Lightfoot takes second place after Ben Walker's win, and I think that was Edward Charles then who came third and would have been the first under 14 on the stage. What that has done to the overall GC, I'm not quite sure at this rate. I don't think too much has changed. I think Angus Stoneham obviously would have been the major upset if he'd stayed away, but he just got reeled in the last few hundred metres. Regardless though, like we said, a brilliant brave effort in Zwift racing, so an awesome bit of effort at the end from Angus Stoneham there.
You've got to be brave to make it hurt that much, and we have GC action in the girls race as well. So Chubak has been distanced again on that steep ramp before the descent, as on the previous lap. She's on her own this time. It's 13 seconds is now the gap, so her third place overall is under huge threat. And it was a huge move from Portland to try and definitively finish this race that put her under pressure. We did have some splits. Izzy Mays was actually the rider that was closest to holding Portland's wheel as we went over the first part of the descent. But now that group of group of six riders, is back together with Chubak chasing on. And the gap is only going out. It's 18, 19 seconds now. So Chubak, third place overall, is under real pressure. McKinnon and Electra Morris, Elizabeth McKinnon and Electra Morris are the riders looking to leapfrog her. They only needed 0.1 of a second and 1 second. So it's big pressure on Chubak once again. She hasn't got allies to help her this time. Morris and Greaves are the ones that are pushing on at the front of the group. Morris trying to make sure Chubak can't get back on. Greaves needs to find a way to take those 8 seconds back on Portland. The only real opportunity left before the final sprint is going to be that ramp up in the escalator in the tube station. So does Greaves think that there's enough slope there to take 8 seconds? She's going to have to continue the effort over the top into the finishing straight if that's what she's going to do. Greaves is currently on the front of the group. We've got Portland sitting further back, keeping an eye on her rivals as she rides through to the front. Dominating performance on the climbs as we head into the tunnel. The final crucial moment before we head towards the final sprint is approaching.
Just flicking back down the rankings, I can see Ben Flato, George Eames, who were in that front group earlier and just got separated on Box Hill. They're just bringing it home right now. Lots of small groups left in the boys' race, but all, there are a few groups to still sprint it out.
We have Chubak working incredibly hard, 5 watts per kilo, to peg that gap and try and get herself back into this race to try and save her podium position. She's at 19 seconds now, so she is closing the gap as the front groups start to look at each other in the battle for position as we go up this escalator. So we're just coming off the tube line onto the platform. Portland's at the front. Greaves, her overall rival, is right on her wheel. 8 seconds is the gap between those two as we turn left, and now we go up the escalator. Are we going to see the big attacks here, or are riders going to try and save themselves for the sprint? Mays is the one that launches the first move. She's leading up the ramp. Portland is behind Havisham, and now the other GC riders are coming through. Here comes McKinnon looking to try and take back time. Portland powers on the pedals, 8.6 watts per kilo, red number. She goes to the front of the group. Greaves was not able to take advantage. She's saving herself for the finish, looking to take a gap in that final sprint. It's Portland that leads the group. She'll be really satisfied that she's managed to keep everything together, or at least keep herself in the front of the race over that dangerous part there. Havisham just got tailed off by the leaders on that climb, so we're down to 5 riders at the front. The 4 riders in the lead. Electra Morris tagged on the back, and then Havisham trying to get back into the front of the race. We have Mays, who is the one rider that's managed to infiltrate this front group that wasn't in the top 5. So she is looking to continue to capitalise. She has got a minute and a half to take back on Havisham. So Havisham has to keep the pressure on the pedals. 4 seconds is nowhere near enough to threaten her overall position. So she's in a strong position for her defending her overall place in 6th, but she needs to keep working all the way to the line as the front group starts to look at each other and start to jostle for position as we approach the final few hundred metres for the sprint.
Just watching some of the smaller groups coming in for their finish. Watching Callum Moyer, who I think was well up there in the Cycling Weekly Max Watts Challenge recently. He quite easily wins his minor bunch sprint, but almost got rolled by Tom Mead there.
So Havisham is only 2 seconds behind now. She's starting to close in as the group bends round to the left around the Tower of London, and they will start to slightly rolling. There's a bit of a dip down towards the line, so you can afford to launch a little bit early with a downhill finish. And it's quite important not to let someone get the jump on you, otherwise that might be a gap that you're never going to close again. So who is going to be brave? Who's going to be the one to jump first, or are we going to see someone time it and take advantage of their rivals leaving them out for the finish? Mays is at the front. We've got Greaves second overall on the wheel. Mays launches 10 watts per kilo straight away. She's going to lead it out. We've got an aero boost used by a couple of riders. It's Mays, Izzy Mays, who's leading the group. Horton into second place, second wheel at the moment. We've got McKinnon, who's behind her, and then Electra Morris. It looks like it's going to be McKinnon, who's taken both road stages so far, that takes the lead. She's got Portland on the wheel. McKinnon putting the pressure on as we head downhill towards the finish. It's McKinnon, 100 metres to go. Is she going to take 3 road sprints out of 3? She is. It's going to be Portland on the wheel behind her. Izzy Mays looks like she's taken 3rd on the stage, with Greaves and Havisham and Cheeback bringing the rest of the group behind. So dominating performance on the road stages, fantastic sprinting once again by McKinnon. She is taking another stage win. That's 3 for the collection on this weekend.
I find Zwift racing very convenient because I don't have to go on a 400-mile round trip to and from a Zwift race. I can just hop out of my bed and I'm on. Zwift racing is quite a different experience to normal racing because you have to realise that you don't really need to worry about crashing. You don't need to worry about corners. There's no wind or weather conditions. And overall, this leads to quite a different experience to one you have out on the road. And once you start to think of Zwift as more of a video game and start to really look at all the information that you have on the screen, you'll become quite a lot better at Zwift racing. I did go into the final stage with a plan, but my plan got blown out of the water a bit on the first climb, where my concentration went for a wee second and I found myself too far back in the bunch and there was a split in front of me. And I just sort of watched myself get dropped as the gap went from 1 metre to about 110 metres at one point, I think it was. But I really had to fight to get back. I went and really pushed myself and somehow managed to catch the bunch. I didn't think I'd be able to. And that was just before the second time up the climb, which was really hard to stay on because I'd wasted so much energy. But I managed to hang in there, and from there it was just about trying not to get dropped and to hang on to that second place, which I managed to do.
I do enjoy Zwift racing, as it is more intense than in the real world. However, I am excited to get back into real racing, as it involves a lot more elements like cornering and bike handling skills, rather than just being focused on primarily power. To make sure I was fully rested before the tour, I had a rest day the previous day, and because the race was later in the evening, I had an activation ride earlier in the morning. I am having a rest day after the tour and spinning my legs the day after, before continuing my training on the Tuesday. Before each stage I did a recce of the course when available, otherwise I looked online at the upcoming course. My plan for the last stage was to stay with the front group. Due to Box Hill, I knew I had to stay in a good position in order to not lose any time on the GC.
I would say there's lots of differences between Zwift and real life racing. Some advantages and some disadvantages. One big advantage is, being from the southwest, online racing eliminates the fact that you have to travel. However, I think the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. Because in real life, there's so many variables. For example, wind, where you sit in the group, and obviously real life numbers on your bike, computer don't matter, and on Zwift they do. Before each stage, I usually look at the courses to see where the sprint points are and any significant climb. I'm also very familiar with London and Watopia, as I've been riding there for roughly 3 years. Final stage, my plan was to sit in the bunch and not let anyone within 30 seconds on the GC attack and gain time. But I was also trying to defend the points competition from Callum Jones, so I aimed to win the intermediate sprints points, which I did, which made it easier for me on the final sprint.
I quite enjoy Zwift racing. However, I only started racing on Zwift at the beginning of lockdown, as my coach said it would be a good high-intensity training session, so it has definitely been a learning curve for me. I find it completely different to the real deal of racing, as even though there are tactics involved, you don't have to worry about working your way through the bunch or the technical aspect of racing. I adjusted my training slightly before the tour, as I eased off my training during that week so I was not fatigued going into the race. I had a look at what courses I would be doing and told my coach, and he gave me insight of what each course would be like and the aspects to watch out for. To be honest, I didn't really have a plan going into the last race. I knew I had lost time on the TT, and I don't really do TT, and it is my weakest discipline. All I wanted to do was stick with the front group and try and go for the win again. It was very tough to stick with the front group as there were so many strong riders up there. Marie was very strong on the climb, so it was hard to attack, especially as my legs were very fatigued by the last stage.